Hey guys, this is a video reply to Stefan Molyneux. I was listening to uh, him discuss the Trump-Clinton debate. He was discussing it with his associate Mike, who works on the Free Domain Radio call-in show. And one of the things that he said was incorrect, and that is that if a libertarian wishes to object to stop and frisk policies, then they need to go and live in Chicago.
Because the stop and frisk, first of all, I will respect libertarians who dislike stop and frisk if they go live in a ghetto in Chicago. If they go and do that, and there's they still don't want any stop and frisk with bullets flying through the walls and stuff. Okay, I at least get respect for consistency, but they're New Hampshire. Anyway, so libertarian, I don't know, a lot of... and the other thing, too, it's that the stop and frisk stuff, personally, myself, if stop and frisk means that occasionally I get inconvenienced by having a cop check if I have a gun, okay, that's a bit of a drag, and I understand that. However, if it means that the people around me aren't carrying guns, I think that that's a whole lot better. And the funny thing is they want gun control, and stop and frisk is a great way of having gun control.
Yeah, somehow we're going to have gun control, but we can't actually do anything to maybe, stop people from possessing guns that they shouldn't have. This is just, again, magic, My Little Pony thinking, which you discussed earlier.
Specifically inner city Chicago. And that really, first of all, it's incorrect. You don't need to go and live in a situation and to be morally opposed to it. This is something that I think Stefan spells out very clearly in his book, Universally Preferable Behavior. So one of the things he talked about there is that, well, first of all, he said that stop and frisk worked under Rudy Giuliani, and there are a couple of things that I'd like to add to that. Is, first of all, you don't need to use stop and frisk in today's legal structure to essentially stop people willy-nilly. One of the problems that libertarians have with modern society is that it's virtually impossible to walk down the street without committing a variety of crimes that police could stop you for if they felt like it. So you don't need to stop people for no reason in a legal framework where you can stop people for any reason already. So you don't need stop and frisk. Steph has also said in the past that he's cited studies that he seems to believe, so I would imagine that he would accept it as a fact, that minorities and specifically blacks commit more crimes, not necessarily major ones, but smaller ones like jaywalking or, traffic violations and stuff like that. I believe he's cited it in the past with regard to, why black people tend to have more interactions with the criminal justice system at all. So if that statistic is true, then, and if the legal system currently requires people to actually, commit a crime in order for the police to have an interaction with them, then even by his own, the evidence that he's provided, you don't need stop and frisk. Because you can already stop anyone, and the neighborhoods where the crime problems are the worst already have people that are more stoppable. Now, I've advocated in the past, I think that one of the things, if you're going to teach people stuff in public school, I think that specifically in in areas with high minority populations, I think kids would benefit from having a formal education in law. Back down, we'll see how low you could go. Steph has talked, he's advocated philosophy for young kids, which I think is a wonderful idea. But you could also have law and talk about the legal framework. As I've explained when I've spoken to high school students about law and politics, the way most people learn about law in this country is the way they learn to play the game Monopoly. The way you learn to play the game Monopoly in most cases is you don't go and you don't start by reading the rules and going from there. You pretty much sit down in a game that's already in progress or just starting with people who've already played before. And they're often playing by house rules, which is really how a lot of cities operate from a law enforcement standpoint. I was just watching a video, where a police officer on a university campus was telling students that the Constitution does not apply on their campus. Well, that's wrong, and those are house rules. And eventually, organizations like FIRE go and take them to court and rap their knuckles with a ruler, which, since this was a public university and they're state funded, even if they were to get a huge payout, wrapping the government's fingers and having the government take a bunch of money from them just results in the need for them to take more money. So really, the system of checks and balances is broken because any punishment that the government gets that's serious results in more of the conduct that resulted in the punishment. So that's ridiculous. But anyway, so we've talked a little bit about that, but there's another thing too. There are two factors I wanted to bring up with regard to stop and frisk in really bad neighborhoods. One, so Mike and Steph seem to be advocating stop and frisk in order to get guns from people who shouldn't have them. I assume they mean, in the legal sense, people under disability, either crazy people or felons, people that the courts have prohibited from having guns in the future. And obviously, that's one of the biggest problems with gun control is they are correct. They were correct in their comments. Gun control doesn't work because they have been completely unable to keep the people. There are already millions of Americans who are not allowed to have guns, and they have them anyway. And in fact, they're some of the most likely people to have guns, because they're actually, because they're ignoring any restrictions, it's easier for them to get them. So yeah, I understand their interest in stop and frisk for felons, but you can't really tell necessarily felons before you look at them. Also, I don't know the specific legal details in this, but it's my understanding that police do not need a reason to stop a convicted felon, someone who they know to be a felon. So if you did have police in a neighborhood, knowing people, then knowing who the felons are in a given neighborhood, then it would already be legal to check and see if they have any weapons to make sure that they're not violating parole, or to make sure that they're not violating their disability status as a felon, or someone with extreme mental illness. So yet again, we don't need stop and frisk. So then, well, why would a law-abiding person not like stop and frisk? Well, because gun control is a sensitive issue, we've gradually walked towards allowing law-abiding people, even in bad neighborhoods, people who live in bad neighborhoods like McDonald from Chicago. There's a big McDonald case you guys might want to look into. So essentially, if someone is legitimately carrying a firearm and they're legally doing it and they're allowed to do it, I believe they should be able to do so without being accosted by police. And, this is one of the reasons I advocate concealed carry, is because police can't stop you if they don't know that you have a firearm. Whereas if you're walking around in Chicago with a rifle, I would imagine you're going to get a lot of conversations on that. So the big problem here, though, is that for law-abiding people like myself, who already don't commit crimes because the ramifications are much higher for me. I would have to take time away from work, and I'm, funding a family and all this kind of stuff. So it would be a really big hit because I have a lot to lose from committing crimes. The problem is, though, that the laws surrounding firearm possession oftentimes have very strict penalties. So even if I'm walking around not shooting anyone and I get stopped in a stop and frisk situation, this introduces a situation where police may be correct or may be incorrect, and it could result in a felony stop situation where they just assume I'm a felon and they order me to the ground and push my face into the concrete and hold me at gunpoint and maybe have angry dogs barking and chewing at me. There are all kinds of things that could go wrong in that, and in the past they have escalated to use of lethal force against innocent people. There was a case in a Costco a couple years back. I think it was in the Southwest somewhere, of the United States. And there was a guy who was lawfully carrying concealed, and he was trying out some products. He wanted to see, I think, if some water bottles would fit in a bag that he wanted to buy. And he was not going to steal them. He had no intention of do that, but one of the store employees started getting, pushy with him about it. And he was like, hey, I'm just trying this out, just back off. Well, the store employee noticed, and this is partially the failing of the concealed carry licensee, that apparently there, in some way, the firearm that he was carrying was visible to the store employee. So they flipped out and they called the police, and they falsely reported essentially an active shooter type situation. They said there's an agitated man with a firearm running around Costco and he's being erratic. And so the police, of course, responded fearing the worst, and they cleared the store. And as happens in so many of these cases, as the man was leaving the store, he was given conflicting orders. He had the firearm in a holster. He had never removed the firearm from the holster at any point in this incident, by all accounts. The police arrived. The store employee said, that's the guy right there, and the cops kind of swarmed in. Well, they gave conflicting orders. One was to put your hands up, which would get the hands away from where the firearm was in his waist holster. And then other officers were yelling, drop the gun. Okay, well, if your hands are up away from the gun, you cannot drop it. I would, as a concealed firearms instructor, I would say you should probably err toward just keeping your hands away from any firearms and doing anything that they might consider aggressive with it, and let the officers remove the firearm, because that's what they're going to do, even if they tackle you to the ground and all that kind of stuff. But at least they can't say you were reaching for a gun, which is a capital offense in this country. So I might understand, there's a lot I agree with Stefan, and I understand that his perspective may be a little bit different because he's a Canadian and he has not lived in the United States. And to my knowledge, he doesn't have an absolute right to the defense of himself, his friends, and his family. So I could understand this kind of gun control mindset from him, where, it's safe to assume that people don't have a gun. But, I would like to assume that the good guys have guns, that the good guys can protect against bad guys when they're encountered, that the good guys don't need to be hassled. They don't need to be stopped and frisked, because that can lead to misunderstandings that can lead to the death of the person who is a good guy. And I think we'd like to keep more good guys around. I think Steph is totally wrong on this one. He's wrong just on general philosophical grounds that are outlined in his own book, Universally Preferable Behavior. He's wrong because if you're a libertarian, you don't have to live in a situation to object to the way people are treated who are in that situation. I would, one of the things that he promotes in his show is that if he's wrong about something and you have evidence that he's wrong, then by all means call him on it, and he will change his position in accordance with the facts. So I would like Steph to, if he hasn't already, he may have, I'm a little behind in some of the shows, but I think it's important that Steph would recognize that he made this error, and it would be a great opportunity for him to talk a little bit more about what's wrong with stop and frisk from an ethical standpoint, and how it isn't needed, as I've outlined in this video, and just say, hey, one of my viewers called me out on something, and no, libertarians don't have to live in every situation that they object to, because certainly Steph does not live in every situation that he objects to. So I'd like to see that, and Mike as well. I think it would do a great job to maintain the credibility that got my respect and interest in the show in the first place. So anyway, thanks a lot. This is Mark Noble, and I haven't been vlogging a lot lately, but I plan to chime in on issues like this, where I think a calm, rational, measured response would benefit the situation. So anyway, thank you very much for watching my video, Steph and Mike. If you do, I hope you do, I'll be sending it to you a couple of different ways, email and Twitter. But anyway, thanks for watching.